Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the history books to separate fact from fiction regarding one of history's most fiercely debated figures, Christopher Columbus. We're going to break down his life, his voyages, and that incredibly complex legacy he left behind. Let's get into it.
We all know that famous rhyme from when we were kids, right? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. It sounds so simple, so triumphant. But today, we're looking at the fascinating, chaotic, and highly controversial reality of his 4 distinct voyages. Because what happened after he crossed that ocean literally changed the trajectory of human history forever.
Moving into Section 1, The Man and the Mission, Origins, Sponsors, and 1492.
So, born in Genoa, Italy, back in 1451, Columbus actually came from a relatively humble background. But the guy had a massively ambitious vision for the 15th century, which was finding a brand new westward trade route to the riches of Asia. Now, it wasn't an easy pitch, but after years of persistence, he finally managed to convince Spain's Catholic monarchs, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, to bankroll this enormous gamble.
His very first expedition was actually pretty small in scale, but it completely altered global history. Setting sail from Spain, he commanded just 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Niña. After weeks of navigating the open ocean, Columbus and his crew finally made landfall on October 12, 1492, arriving on an island in the present-day Bahamas that he decided to name San Salvador. And right here is the major geographical mix-up that really defined his legacy. Columbus firmly believed, without a doubt, that he had successfully reached the East Indies. In reality, he had stumbled upon the Americas. Amazingly, Columbus went to his grave never realizing he had encountered an entirely different landmass. Talk about a historic misunderstanding.
Let's look at Section 2, 3 more chaotic voyages, the unraveling of an explorer.
We so often just focus on that first trip, but Columbus actually made a total of 4 voyages across a really turbulent decade between 1492 and 1504. Each one ventured further into uncharted territories for the Spanish crown, exploring various islands in the Caribbean and even pushing into regions like present-day Venezuela, Honduras, and Panama. To give you an idea of the sheer scale of his return, just consider this number, 17. For his second voyage in 1493, he didn't just bring 3 little ships. He commanded a massive fleet of 17 ships carrying around 1,200 men. This was no longer just a scouting mission, it was a full-blown operation for permanent settlement. Things took a dark turn during his third voyage in 1498 when Columbus explored the coast of South America. His administration of these new settlements was met with, severe dissatisfaction. Escalating hostility, combined with his incredibly harsh treatment of both the native populations and his own men, forced Spanish authorities to intervene. It got so bad that Columbus was actually arrested and brought back to Spain in chains in the year 1500.
His fourth and final attempt, which kicked off in 1502, was just plagued by constant setbacks. Still desperately trying to find that elusive route to Asia, his fleet was battered by relentless storms, leaving his ships decaying and falling apart. With his crew suffering from severe illness and exhaustion and absolutely failing to find those promised Asian riches, he limped back to Spain in 1504. It ended his exploration career on a very, very harsh note.
Moving on to Section 3. Who really discovered America? Predating 1492.
You see, the idea that Columbus discovered America is a very narrow view of history. To accurately understand the timeline of the Americas, we have to pull the lens back much, much further than the late 15th century. Because if Columbus wasn't first, who was already there?
First and foremost, the land Columbus reached was far, far from uninhabited. Millions of indigenous people had been living in the Americas for thousands of years. Long before any European arrived, these indigenous cultures had established thriving, rich societies and deeply complex, vibrant civilizations. But hey, even if we look strictly from a European exploration standpoint, Columbus still wasn't the first. Norse explorers actually arrived a staggering 500 years before Columbus ever set sail. That's half a millennium.
Around the year 1000 AD, a Norse explorer named Leif Erikson established a settlement known as Vinland, located up in what is now Newfoundland, Canada. Modern archaeological findings, along with historical Viking prose poems, completely confirm this settlement. This evidence significantly diminishes the claim that Columbus was the absolute first European to reach the Americas, and it totally shifts how we view the timeline of early exploration.
Which brings us to Section 4, the complex Columbus legacy, exploration, exchange, and exploitation.
You really can't talk about his legacy without talking about the Columbian Exchange. This term captures the absolute reshaping of the globe following his voyages. It refers to the massive historical transfer of people, animals, food, cultures, and diseases between the Old World of Europe and the New World of the Americas. It fundamentally altered global daily life, literally changing what people ate, how they farmed, and the biological threats they faced every single day. And this exchange definitely had a dual nature. On one hand, it introduced Old World wheat to the Americas and staple crops like corn, tomatoes, and potatoes to Europe. But conversely, it introduced devastating foreign diseases to the Americas, combined with widespread displacement, exploitation, and the total disruption of local trade. This caused a catastrophic, fatal decline in Native American populations. When Christopher Columbus passed away in 1506, he was entirely unaware of his true location on the map. He died still firmly believing he had successfully found a new route to the West Indies. He just never fully understood the true scope, nor the actual location of the massive lands he had claimed for Spain. Today, history looks at Columbus with intense scrutiny, and his legacy is, as you might expect, fiercely debated. On one side of the historical ledger, his initial voyage undeniably spurred centuries of global exploration and initiated the modern interconnected world we live in today. On the other side, that exact same exploration immediately led to the severe exploitation, displacement, and tragic destruction of the native populations he encountered. It's a legacy where exploration and exploitation are permanently intertwined. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. When an individual's actions reshape the entire world but bring about devastating consequences for millions, how do we objectively measure their place in history? Considering both the undeniable reality of the global exchange and the devastating human cost, how should history remember its explorers? It's a question that challenges us to think critically about how we write our history books and exactly who gets to write them. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.